The rules of the game have changed, and the IDF is hitting Hezbollah where it really hurts, in their wallet. This means airstrikes on branches of banks where Hezbollah had all their cash, mostly in the Dahian neighborhood of southern Beirut. Speaking of money, Hezbollah terrorists captured by the IDF in Lebanon have admitted to their interrogators that they are paying bribes to UNIFIL employees to allow them to use their bases for military purposes, making them a legitimate target for the IDF. The United Nations is strongly denying this charge, but it's difficult to imagine that they've had time to even start investigating to see if it's true or not. Meanwhile, there is hope that the death of Hamas leader Yair Sinwar will lead to a deal to end the war and release the remaining Israeli hostages. The IDF is reporting that great progress have already been made in sweeping up the remnants of Hamas in the northern city of Jabalia, as well as in the Rafah in the south. We have a long way to go, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what is happening in Israel on the 381st day of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, all the Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria, and behind them is Iran, the head of the axis of evil in the Middle East. Before we start, I would like to ask you to please subscribe to this YouTube channel so that you will never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. Today's report is sponsored by 8 Days of Hope, which is doing incredible things in the United States. I'll give you more information about them later on, but first, the news. The IDF is changing its strategic focus in Lebanon, although rocket launchers, weapons depots, and fighting positions are still being targeted. Another important strategic asset of Hezbollah is being hit hard as well, and that's their cash. On Sunday evening, while the banks were closed and no employees or customers were inside them, the IDF began to act against the economic institutions of the organization. In the following hours, the IDF intended to strike dozens of buildings and structures that serve as headquarters for the organization's financial system. According to reports in Arab media portals, the IDF has already attacked at least 13 of these financial institutions in the Dahia district in Beirut, and there are also warnings of attacks on economic institutions deep in the north of Lebanon as well. Israeli officials told the Wall Street Journal that the aim of the attack is to damage Hezbollah's ability to function during the war as well as afterwards, to rebuild and arm the organization the day after. A word of explanation is in order here. Hezbollah pays salaries of hundreds of dollars every month to each of its operatives, but these salaries are only part of the basket of benefits that these terrorists receive. Other welfare benefits include financial support to the family of the terrorists, food assistance, medical assistance, funding for educational needs, and much more. In this way, Hezbollah creates incentives for the gunmen to stay loyal to the organization and builds up its own support network in the broader Lebanese society. According to the testimony of some Hezbollah fighters who have been captured in Lebanon, a large percentage of these terrorists are only in it for the benefits. They are not motivated by religious reasons, as the previous generations of Hezbollah who fought Israel in the Second Lebanon War in 2006 were. This is why, over the years, through careful surveillance and intelligence work, Israel has mapped out all of these financial support networks, including the sources of income, the location of bank branches, distribution points, and more. Now, using this map, Israel is systematically cutting off the money supply to all of these networks of patronage and support. At the same time, many of Lebanon's most wealthy citizens have fled the country, and they took a lot of their money with them. So, if Hezbollah wanted to try and extort these wealthy people, that source of revenue is also lost to them. Although this campaign to cut off Hezbollah's money supply has just begun, it is already showing good results. According to a recent report in the Voice of America news portal, Hezbollah is facing financial collapse, with its three main sources of funding drying up. According to the report, Hezbollah's money is organized through three main sources. The first and main source is El-Qard El-Hassan, a kind of bank owned by Hezbollah, which is actually an Iranian association that functions without proper government licensing and grants interest-free loans to the organization's members. Another source of funding is recognized and authorized banks in Lebanon that Hezbollah uses to launder money it makes from narcotics trafficking all over Africa, Europe, and Latin America. And finally, there are large amounts of cash that come to Hezbollah directly from Iran. A source quoted in the report said, "I hear from Lebanese bankers, including Hezbollah appointees, that the wealthy stratum in Lebanon, the one who can afford to flee, left the country's borders and fled to Europe. Also, the Iranians are afraid to send money to Lebanon because Israel is threatening to attack targets that enter Beirut's airspace. The Israelis warned that they would attack planes that transfer money and not just weapons." Now, let's take a closer look at the El-Qard El-Hassan Bank, which the IDF began vigorously targeting overnight on Sunday and into Monday morning. This bank has 31 branches in different areas in Lebanon. According to Hezbollah, this is an association that has opponents in different parts of Lebanon, partly because over the years it has gradually replaced the Lebanese banking system. This harms a lot of vested interests as well as the public sector and other institutions. Other factions in Lebanon also saw this association as a key pillar in Hezbollah's state within a state, which allows them to operate outside the boundaries of traditional society and politics. It is through their control of this association and the vast reserves of cash and gold that it controls that, according to the IDF intelligence, Hezbollah has become the strongest and richest employer in Lebanon. This has happened in spite of the crippling economic recession that Lebanon has been in for almost 5 years now. Therefore, the IDF has decided to physically destroy the buildings where Hezbollah keeps all its cash and gold reserves, which are just as strategically important to Hezbollah as the rockets and missiles. This campaign against Hezbollah's money will continue alongside the campaign against the rockets and missiles, as well as the fighters who pose a threat to Israel's border communities. Here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on this situation moving forward. We ask you to join us in this battle for sharing the truth. So please share these videos on YouTube, subscribe to this YouTube channel, follow us on social media, and regularly check in our website at tbnisrael.com/news. Together, we will share the truth with the world that badly needs to hear it. Now, switching our focus back to a more old-fashioned way of warfare, the ground troops of the IDF are continuing their systematic destruction of Hezbollah tunnels and other fighting positions near the Israeli border. The IDF spokesman issued an update on Sunday morning on the continuation of the ground activity in the Gaza Strip and in southern Lebanon, and stated that, among other things, terrorist infrastructures and tunnel shafts, along with vast stockpiles of Hezbollah weapons, including anti-tank missiles and launchers aimed at Israeli communities in the north of the country, were destroyed, while dozens of terrorists were eliminated over the last 24 hours. There is also some good news to tell you today, coming from a source we usually wouldn't hear much good news from, and that's Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. He has sent messages to Iran and Hezbollah that he did not want them to embroil him in the war with Israel. Apparently, he doesn't think that this war against Israel is going very well for them and doesn't want to join a losing battle. However, to be honest, he's not really in charge of what happens in Syria these days, so this warning he's giving his allies might not have the desired effect. Still, it's a good sign. However, there was also a bad sign on Sunday, in the form of a UAV which was launched at Israel from Syrian territory and intercepted by the IDF air defense units. Close by, the forces of the IDF's Golani Brigade are operating in the area of southern Lebanon in a targeted ground operation. In the operation of the forces, they have so far eliminated about 60 terrorists from the ground and have directed hundreds of airstrikes at Hezbollah targets. They have also captured or destroyed large quantities of Hezbollah weapons and ammunition, as well as intelligence materials. A second, before we move on to what is happening in the Gaza Strip, I would like to introduce you to our sponsor for today. As you probably know by now, there have recently been several large-scale natural disasters in the United States, affecting millions of people in multiple states. But just like here in Israel, when there are people in need, God sends help. 8 Days of Hope is a Christian non-profit organization that is doing exactly that. They have hundreds of volunteers feeding communities, rebuilding houses, and finding shelters for everyone that is affected from the storms. 8 Days of Hope really needs your help so that they can keep bringing hope to those people. You can see the address now on the screen, and you can also find it in the description. So guys, please make a donation, and you can even become a volunteer yourself. And switching our focus to the Gaza Strip. After the elimination of Yair Sinwar, the head of the murderous terrorist organization Hamas, IDF forces continue the extensive operation in Gaza aimed at dismantling this organization. As part of the operations in the field, the IDF published documentation from the 3 main combat zones: Rafah in the southern Gaza Strip, Central Gaza, and Jabalia in the northern Gaza Strip, showing the activities of the forces in their fight against Hamas. The IDF forces have used a combined arms approach to their operations in the Gaza Strip, incorporating air, ground, artillery, and even sea forces to apply maximum pressure on Hamas wherever and whenever they could be located and destroyed. Rafah, the Hamas capital in the south of the Gaza Strip near the border with Egypt, was an important strategic asset for Hamas activity. We can see this by the extensive tunnel system that they used to smuggle weapons, narcotics, people, and many other things back and forth to Egypt, as well as other parts of the Gaza Strip. Ever since entering Rafah, the IDF forces have been working to uncover and destroy terrorist tunnels alongside targeted operations designed to hit senior Hamas commanders operating in the area. Also, in the center of the Gaza Strip, IDF soldiers are working to dismantle the infrastructure that Hamas built up over many years, including warehouses of weapons and command and control systems. The fighting in central Gaza is intense, with battles in built-up territory where the forces are required to fight the complexity of population density. The IDF's latest operation in the northern Gaza Strip continues to expand, along with the evacuation of the population from large areas. The city of Jabalia has been the scene of intense fighting in recent days, although the civilian population is beginning to move in large numbers out of the city, enabling the IDF to concentrate on the remaining pockets of Hamas activity. Another big issue that's come up in recent days is the narrative surrounding the death of the late Hamas leader, Yair Sinwar. Some voices are trying to lionize this evil man, saying that he died heroically, fighting the Israelis to his last dying breath. But this is an absurd fairy tale that will do nothing to improve the situation for Palestinians, Israelis, and anyone else. The undeniable truth is that Sinwar died as he lived, as a coward, running away from danger, while he sent other people to fight and die for the sick, twisted, and evil vision for the future that he had talked himself into believing was possible. We can be quite sure that in his last moments, as he sat on a filthy sofa on the second floor of a destroyed house, he looked out through the massive hole that had been blasted in the wall and saw his legacy. He saw Gaza in ruins, and the IDF troops are victorious against these terrorists of Hamas. And I like to think that as he slipped away, the thought might have passed through his mind that it was all his fault. Or maybe he already knew that, and this is why he and his fellow Hamas leaders had grabbed all the cash that they could find, along with fake documents, and were trying to make a run for the tunnels that would take them out of the Gaza Strip that they ruined and bring them under the border into Egypt. From there, they could flee to comfort and safety somewhere else. Maybe they planned to make a run for the luxurious hotels of Doha, Qatar, where Hamas leaders like Khaled Mashal still spend their days planning ways to send other people's children to fight in this war while they enjoy the good life in the hotels. Contrary to the false narratives which are already being emerged, Sinwar did not go down fighting, unless you count throwing a stick at a drone as going down fighting. The IDF soldiers who found his body said that he spent his last moments covering himself up with blankets, trying to hide instead of reaching for an AK-47 rifle beside him. Here at TBN Israel, we will continue to tell you the truth, and we ask you to join us by sharing these videos on YouTube, subscribing to this YouTube channel, and following us on social media. Please take a moment and find the subscribe button so that you will never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. I want to conclude today's report by speaking about the United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, or UNIFIL for short. Hezbollah terrorists who were captured by the IDF in recent days have told their interrogators that Hezbollah paid money to UNIFIL personnel to use their positions in southern Lebanon. According to the sources privy to the details, Hezbollah also took over the UNIFIL security cameras in the compounds near the Israeli border and used them. In recent weeks, as the IDF moved into southern Lebanon to confront the threat from Hezbollah, UNIFIL refused urgent requests from Israel to evacuate its forces so that they would not be in danger. Hezbollah has used these UNIFIL troops as human shields, and the IDF has been harshly criticized for incidents in which it fired at Hezbollah fighters and nearby UNIFIL troops were wounded in this crossfire. Despite this, the United Nations has stubbornly refused to evacuate these UNIFIL peacekeepers who have utterly failed to keep the peace, endangering the lives of these soldiers who have been sent to southern Lebanon by 50 different countries around the world. The governments of some of these countries, which have sent many people, including Italy, Spain, and Ireland, have cynically joined the United Nations game of criticizing Israel for what's going on instead of taking the obvious step of getting their people out of harm's way. In view of these things, as well as UNIFIL's complete failure to enforce United Nations Security Council Resolution 1701 and prevent Hezbollah from establishing itself along the Israeli border, it is becoming more urgent to say that in any future settlement, security on Lebanon's side of the border must be managed more by the Lebanese National Army and less by UNIFIL. This United Nations peacekeeping force has proven itself to be unreliable and corrupt, more a part of a problem than part of a solution. In Israel, it is believed, among other things, that UNIFIL's insistence on remaining is related to the organization's attempts to cover up its ongoing failure in not preventing the arming of Hezbollah and the flagrant violations of Resolution 1701. Not only that, but in recent months, the IDF reports Hezbollah has been firing rockets at Israel from sites close to UNIFIL positions. Some of the rockets have fallen close to their positions as well. Here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on these developments moving forward. But before we end this video, I want to pay my last respects to a hero of Israel who fell defending our country. The IDF allowed publication on Sunday that the commander of the 401st Brigade, Colonel Ashan Daksa, was killed in action while leading his troops in Jabalia in the Gaza Strip. He left behind a wife and 3 children. Daksa is the most senior commander killed in ground combat since the start of this war. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said, "Today, the State of Israel lost a bold commander, a brave officer, and a man who contributed his energy for the benefit of the country's security." Ashan's character, combined within his love for the homeland, taking initiative and striving for contact while using a personal example for his subordinates and a source of pride for his commanders. Please join me in praying for this brave man's family, but also pray for the peace of Israel, for the IDF soldiers who are in the air, in the sea, and on the ground. Pray for the speedy return of the abductees in Gaza back to their loved ones in Israel. Continue to pray for the quick return of the residents of the North home safely, and most importantly, join us in prayer for the peace of Jerusalem.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.